Buckle your swashes, Wargamers, because today we're going on an adventure. We are looking at Garde, swashbuckling skirmish wargame rules, written by Craig Woodfield and published by Osprey Wargames. This is not I believe it's a role-playing game that was published by Avalon Hill back in the day, about 30 years ago. I remember seeing it in the shop all the time, but never got around to picking it up. This is a skirmish war game that was written just a couple of years ago, and I have played a few games of already, so I'm just about ready. I think my next video is going to be a battle report, not a battle report, a game on featuring this wonderful little skirmish game. And by and large, this skirmish game doesn't offer a whole lot that's new or different. A lot of this will feel warm and comfortable, like an old sweater. When it comes to things like initiative and movement, things of that nature, not a problem. You guys already know basically how to play this game. To give you an idea what the scale is, you can have as few as 3 or 4 figures. Again, it should be obvious that it's a way of recreating those Alexander Dumassian tales, such as Three Musketeers, Count of Monte Cristo, or you can go full-blown historical with it. That's fine too. We'll talk about the factions that are available in just a minute. For now, it's worth pointing out that this is a game that is in the style of the unified stat sheet for each of your dudes. It's not a particularly long stat sheet. We can take a look at it for some of the examples. Here's what it looks like for the Thief. Oh, that's the fantasy stuff. We don't want to talk about that just yet. I said it's kind of historical. So let's look at, here we go. Let's look at Border Reavers. This is who I'm going to use for my Vendéans. Border Reavers are, really, they're more like your Highlanders. But right now we're talking about the stat lines. You've got a rank, which is from 1 to 5, with your worst guys being rank 1, better guys rank 5. How they move, again, it's infantry. All infantry moves about the same. CP is combat pool. That's vital, and that is what makes this game something special. Initiative, fight score, shoot score, and how many points it's worth. And this is essentially a morale. Of course, you can specialize each of your figures for additional amounts of points, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Sticking with what you can represent in the game, creating a warband, they give points cost, and you can do just a simple 250-point game. No big deal. Historical forces are included for things like Landsknechts, who will be fighting primarily with things like pikes. But you do have your Three Musketeers, and in fact, they give you stats for Athos, Aramis, Porthos, and D'Artagnan. And of course, a servant. You know, you need somebody to slap around. Cardinals, Guards, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's actually 6 different stat lines that you can use, from your ruffians up to your officers, and then of course Milady de Winter. They even give you stats for spies like that. You can do conquistadors versus Aztecs with this rule. How cool is that? With this rule set, how cool is that? Militias, soldiers, veterans, hidalgos, and then here's your Aztecs, and in fine Osprey form, they've got some impressive art. Somebody's about to get bonked. Military orders for your Aztecs, and scale neutral, 15, 28 millimeters. Not like we pay attention to that stuff anyway. Again, as I said, your Border Reavers are more like your Scots Highlanders and your regular foot. And then, of course, your general swashbucklers. You can also use these for pirates. Did I skip a page? Yeah, pirates, you can do your Scarlet Pimpernels and your Road Bandits, that kind of thing. Even Ottomans. There's images of the Ottomans. Very diverse, very stunning, very brave. The different even Janissaries, so that's kind of great. They offer guidance for other periods. Now, to be honest with you, I'm going to be pushing the limits of this rule because it doesn't quite go up into the Napoleonic era. I'm going to be using these rules for the War in the Vendée, which is the French Revolution. And really, by the time of the French Revolution, you're really moving away from the hand-to-hand combat. However, I think that I can make this work because you're going to have a situation where very few of the Vendéans are armed with firearms compared to all of the kind of more regular militia and the blue jackets as they come in. Enough dinking around. I got to tell you how combat works, because that's where things are special. Everybody's got a combat score. Very simple. So, in order to play this game, you're going to need some counters. Remember that two of the stats that we talked about were CP and melee skill, basically. Both of those are from 1 to 5. Combat's very simple. You roll, the attacker rolls 2d6, the defender rolls 1d6. Whoever scores, and then you add your fight characteristics. So a guy that's rank 4 is going to add 4 to his roll. The guy that rolls 2d6 takes whichever one is a higher, and then adds his combat score. The poor defender is going to roll 1d6 and add 4, and he's stuck with that. And then the difference between those scores will determine how bad you wound the defender if the attacker wins. If the defender wins, he doesn't do anything. That doesn't sound like it's a whole lot of fun. It doesn't sound very novel or different, but that's because, and it doesn't really mimic the kind of swashbuckling style of combat. But that's because your combat pool enters, and your combat pool determines how many maneuvers you can make, and that's what these little gems are for. You don't need gems. I just use these because they're really sweet. You can use coins, you can use, go pieces, anything as long as you've got 2 different colors, and as long as you can hide which one you're taking. Because on your turn, well, we got to back up a step. First of all, you got to understand that models have an initiative score, and for any given combat, you'll roll a d6. Both sides roll a d6, add their initiative. Whoever wins can elect to attack, or can pass and require the other guy to attack first instead. Why would you want to do that? Well, you'll understand once we talk about these. So what you'll do is select one of these. So for me, I call this red is attack, because you're trying to make the guy bleed, and green is defense. So what you'll do is select one of these for every point you've got in your combat pool. So if I've got a combat pool of 4, I can only take 4 of these. And I don't show my opponent. Whereas my opponent, if he has a combat score of 2 and he really wants to survive this, he will select 2. And we'll go ahead and do this just for funsies. We've got a guy with a combat skill of 4, and the player will select 4 of those gems. He's attacking a guy that only has a combat score of 2, of combat pool of 2. So he selects 2, but you don't show your opponent until it comes time to do that first attack. And then my attacker has the option of doing 2 attack combat maneuvers and 2 defense. Making a normal attack costs 1 gem, or 1 attack maneuver. But if he wanted to, he could do 2. He's going to make a powerful attack and roll an extra die. Or else he could do 2 to do, he could spend 1, I think this, you could do a feint, which means nothing. I'm not actually attacking you this time, which is great because your opponent only has 2 defense. So what winds up happening is you can spend 1 to parry as a defender, and now you get to roll 2 dice. So it's 2d6 against 2d6, take the highest die, add your maneuver. This is where initiative comes into play, because if I'm the attacker and I've got 3 of these bad boys, I can open my attack with a powerful offense. I'm going all out attack, and I can burn off one of his defensive maneuvers. So we've each spent these, and if he survives my attack, now we're down to this. Now, if he has 2 points, he may be able to do a riposte, which is where you only roll 1d6. But if you succeed, I think that costs 2. I can't remember. You'll see when we do the game on. If you spend 2, now the defender actually can hurt the attacker. If he wins, now he's only rolling 1 die, but if he wins, the attacker takes damage. So the attacker may want to burn all those off. because now if you've got that one gem and your opponent doesn't have any, you get a free attack at 2d6 plus 1d6. So there's a lot of strategy that can go into that. I'm gaming solo because I like solo wargaming. So I'm probably going to do just a randomized draw for each of my dudes. I'll put a bunch of green and a bunch of red gems in here and just pull them out. That's my solution for how I can incorporate some uncertainty and the strategy in that. And then, of course, in fine role-playing fashion, what we'll do is we'll interpret what the odds give us later on. It may be that one figure is very cautious and just keeps pulling out green ones. We'll learn what that figure is along the way. And that's really the meat of On Guard. That combat system is brilliant, and it leads to a lot of fun and unexpected stuff in play. The game itself is, it's a little on the complicated side for a skirmish, but that's because it chooses to model that uncertainty of hand-to-hand combat and not knowing what your foe is going to do and trying to outwit and outsmart him. You finish off with a morale phase. I guess I should probably point out that you do have firearms. You fire during the movement phase. Once you've fired your firearm, you have to spend a full movement turn reloading before you can shoot again. Of course, it's black powder era, so what'd you expect? You also have morale. You have leaders that can issue commands to groups of people, so you can move them a little quicker. It does have arms and armor. One thing I should point out is that you've got different wound levels that you have to track with these miniatures. I wouldn't recommend playing the game with more than about a dozen figures on each side because it can get to be a lot to track, or you have to use counters to track who's lightly wounded, heavy wounded. Both of those will make your guy move slower, or it will cost him, I believe it's his fight score can go down. And then, of course, you've got your standard special rules. So in addition to each of these stat lines, you've got things like Archer, where you can make 2 shooting attacks with a bow in the move phase. They're both at -1. You've got Commander, as I said. He can issue commands. I like some of these, Fearless. He ignores the results of any morale test. +1 to initiative for fast guys. A Duelist has a second weapon, and he gets a better combat pool. So you can have a guy with a combat pool of 4, and his combat is only 1. So he's not very good at combat, but he's got a lot of options, and that can make all the difference in the world, because you can burn off all of your opponent's special maneuvers, and then he's at your mercy. You don't, bear in mind, you don't have, if you can survive, because you don't have to show a gem in any given combat. What else do we got? Tactician, you win priority each phase. You got tough guys who all medium wounds become light wounds. You can do banners if you want. Civilians are in there. You can call out duels. So it's got all kinds of fun little stuff. It does do mounted and unmounted. I don't have any mounted figures. It just adds a level of complexity that I'm not really interested in skirmish wargaming. And as you would expect, it's got scenarios of various kinds to keep it from being just to line them up and slam it against each other like action figures. What else can I tell you? It's a Osprey book. I know some people get really hung up on this stuff, so it's high quality, kind of semi-glossy paper. The stitching is fine. I've had this book for a couple of years. It's very well laid out. It's easy to reference, and as we've discussed, it's got plenty of eye candy. It's got plenty of the, painted miniatures, if that's what you need for your inspiration. Oh, let me turn that up. There we go, a little better light there for you. Look at them guys, gorgeous 28mm figures. And it's also got the standard, so there's some more inspiration for you. The Cardinal's Guards protecting, looks like Milady de Winter from Les Three Musketeers. And that's what I was looking for. Your painted art. Osprey, second to none when it comes to that stuff. Fine book, fine game. Really looking forward to showing you how the game works and showing off some of my 15mm figures that are painted in fine Three Musketeers style. We'll probably run through a number of battles as we wait for my next project to kick off, which is related to this. Big battalions, Napoleonic era. All right, maybe it's a little bit later than this, but what are you going to do? In the meantime, that's On Guard. Highly recommend it. I think this book is only like $15, which is some powerful bang for the buck. And what else can I tell you? If you're into Black Powder era, if you're into skirmish wargaming, it does have... Oh, I know what I can tell you. We circle back around to it. The Fantastical. Magicians. What else did it have? The Beast. It's got Witch Hunters for that Solomon Kane style. It's got Witches. Barbarian and Thief. You know, and this cracks me up, because this is clearly, for those of you that are into fantasy fiction, you know who Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser are. This is Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. And inspiration for the reading, which is great from a historical context. Basic quick reference sheets, warband roster. You can print these off the Osprey website. Seriously, bro. Get this book. It's a heck of a lot of fun. You're going to enjoy it if you're at all into this kind of wargaming. Hey, if you're into this, you're going to love this. That's all I got for you today. Remember that I am praying for you. Ave Crux, Spes Unica.